Today I am going to discuss the topic deposits of banks. So when I say the banks, it covers conventional banks and Islamic banks. So this is the CB stands for conventional banks and the IB stands for Islamic banks. So these three accounts I'm going to discuss here in today's lecture because these three accounts are common accounts. Usually these three accounts are common in Islamic and the conventional banking sector. Otherwise, the all banks maintain their individual account, unique accounts like Tijara account maintained by Mizan Bank. Other banks have no this account. So I'm not going to discuss those one. But these three main accounts we can differentiate between conventional banking sector and Islamic banks. Usually, the students uh, uh, don't have the idea how does the accounting side work in Islamic banks. Let's start with the current account. Current account in Urdu, it is known as Jamid account. Jamid का मतलब होता है freeze, यानी वो बढ़ोतरी नहीं होती. It does not grow. So there is no growth in money. That's why it is known as current fixed. So it is known as current account. And conventional bank, it is opened on the basis of loan based account. It means that depositor when open the account and keep his or her money in this account, it means that they are lending their money to the bank, to the, like for example, it is the current account in the conventional bank. So in account, what is the relationship between conventional bank and the depositor? It does matter. So the depositor will be considered as a lender or creditor, and the conventional bank will be considered a debtor or borrower. So we can say that in current account, client and bank relationship is creditor debtor relationship. So I usually call it CD relationship, creditor debtor relationship. So when we see look at in the same account, current account, look at the Islamic banks, we see that in our subcontinent and a majority of the also like Malaysian country, Malaysia and other way, it is also known as loan based account. In the here Islamic banks are debtor. DR stands for debtor in accounting language, and depositors are CR mean creditor. So here is also the relationship between Islamic bank and the client is creditor and debtor relationship. So you can say that there is no difference in Islamic as well as conventional bank regarding the current account, but other difference still exists, and that is the permissibility, because the Sharia scholars does not allow to open current account even in the conventional bank. Why? Because this is loan mean liability. Liability mean the amount you are putting in current account is being lended to conventional bank. Whenever you demand the bank will pay your loan. So that loan amount is totally owned by commercial bank, conventional banks. जब आप किसी को कर्जा देते हैं तो कर्जे का मकरूज मालिक हो जाता है, उसकी मर्जी उसको जहां पर भी लगाए. So when you lend your money to conventional bank, it means that you are authorized, you are giving your money and allowing them to earn interest upon that amount. So it is like that you are cooperating with them in earning interest and dealing in interest. That is prohibited by Sharia. وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Sharia says, but you are doing ta'awun fil ismi wal udwan, and that is a riba. So that is the reason Sharia scholars do not allow to open current account in the conventional banking sector. But it is allowed in Islamic bank, because though you do not charge any profit from Islamic bank in the current account because it is a loan, and no profit can be earned upon the loans. So that is why Islamic banks also do not give any benefit to the client on the loan. So, but it when the client gives them their money through current account, Islamic banks do not deal in interest. They cannot invest that money in on any illegal or the prohibited activities. So that is why here the Sharia scholar says that current account opening in Islamic banks is permissible. So this is the big difference between conventional banking and Islamic banking regarding the current account. Otherwise, there is no difference regarding the remuneration, because this current account is known as non-remunerative current account. Non-remunerative. Remuneration mean reward, profit. So because this account does not generate any profit for client, neither in the conventional bank nor in Islamic banks. This is the loan-based account. Next, a saving account and investment accounts. Saving account, what is the difference between saving account and the investment accounts? This is just short term and the long term period. In account, you can withdraw your money through ATM services, through checkbook. But in investment account, you cannot withdraw your money in from investment account, because here you put your money for long term, like 3 years. So that is the reason here the profit rate is high as compared to saving accounts. सेविंग अकाउंट्स के अंदर आपका प्रॉफिट रेट कम होता है, इन्वेस्टमेंट अकाउंट्स में आपका प्रॉफिट रेट ज्यादा होता है, इन बोथ इन इस्लामिक एज वेल एज कन्वेंशनल बैंक्स. बट व्हाट इज द रिलेशनशिप between the banks and the saving account and the investment? Both accounts are loan based in conventional banking sector. So this is a very important thing to know, that these two accounts, saving accounts and investment accounts, are opened in conventional banks like HBL, MCB, UBL. All of these banks open these two accounts on the basis of loan. What does it mean by loan based? It means that the depositors are considered creditor and the conventional bank is considered as debtor. So there is a creditor debtor relationship among the depositor and the conventional bank. When there is a creditor debtor relationship, Sharia says there no profit can be, no reward can be earned on the loan. And we previously have come to know that in the that on the loans, profit cannot be charged or profits cannot be earned. In saving account, when conventional bank pay the profit to the clients, or an investment account pay the investment pay their clients profit, it is considered interest. Why it is interest? Because their principal amount is saved. There is no risk upon the principal loan, but they are receiving additional amount over their principals. So it is profit earning on the loans. So that is why Islam considered it prohibited. It is riba, it is haram. Look at come to the Islamic banks. Islamic bank also open the saving account and investment account. Both accounts are opened on the basis of mudarba contract. Mudarba is basically one party gives his or her investment capital to the other party to invest it. The other party usually is known as mudarib, manager, who invest that money. What will be the earning that will be shared between the capital provider and the mudarib? And if there would be loss, the only capital provider will bear the loss. Mudarib will not bear any loss. What will be the loss of mudarib? That his efforts will be rewardless. For example, if there are two parties, A and B, A gives 10,000 rupee to Mr. B to invest it, and Mr. B is mudarib. Mr. B worked hard for 2 months. After 2 months, the business faced loss. All financial loss will be borne by Mr. A, who was the capital provider. But Mr. B will not share any loss. And what will be the loss of Mr. B? That he worked hard for 2 months and he did get nothing. So that loss time loss, you will say that effort loss will be considered the loss of Mr. B Mudarib. Is opened on the Mudarba basis. So, what is the relationship between depositor and Islamic bank? Islamic bank is considered Mudarib. This is just, you can say, a typo error, Mudarib. And depositor is considered investor. You can say Rabbul Mal, the owner of the capital. So this is the relationship. So whenever client visit Islamic bank and he wants to open a saving account or investment account, he will be he is provided usually a document, and there are clauses, and you will find all the clauses are fulfill the terms and conditions of mudarba. And here at the sign at the end he signs, and he gives his consent that if there will be loss in saving account or investment account, he yeah, I mean depositor will be the loss. So he signed it and submit to the Islamic bank and open a saving and investment account. So this is the difference between Islamic bank and the conventional banks. That in the conventional bank, depositors do not bear any risk, while in Islamic banks, depositor bear a risk of loss. So this is the difference between these two bank systems. Look at here, because in all these three accounts, there is only one contract, and that is loan. And on loan, conventional bank is giving profits. Only loan-based financing. There is a no risk of loss. But it means that there are guaranteed profits in conventional banks. Whereas Islam says, if you want to if you want to make profit, you must be a risk of loss. This is the principle of Sharia. How whereas there is a no risk of loss in the conventional banking sector. What is the risk? What risk? What type of risk exists in this sector? That is risk of default. Risk of default means that the client will not pay. The financing will not be paid by the clients. And this risk can be controlled by charging pledge, charging security deposits, charging guarantee, so etc. This risk will become zero after charging mortgaging, after charging the pledge. Then this risk will be become equal to zero. Whereas if you look to the Islamic banking sector, there are both type of risks: risk of default, risk of loss. Looking at the loan based, when the Islamic banks finance the customers, then Islamic bank face a risk of default, that the customer who avail financing of Islamic bank, they may default. If they default, then there will be credit loss of Islamic banks. But how it can be covered? Islamic banks can cover this risk of default by charging pledge, चार्जिंग mortgage. वो किसी से जमानत मांग सकते हैं कि भी मुमकिन है तुम कल को हमारे पैसे वापस ना करो, तो हमारे पास कोई चीज़ गिरवी रखवा दो. जब कोई when you keep asset as a pledge or mortgage, then this risk has been controlled. But the risk of loss, this risk of loss is beyond the control of human being. Why? Because if this, for example, uh, is like an investment, that if the environment of market is not friendly and the prices goes down, then you have to bear loss. So this is risk of loss. So this type of risk is considered valid risk, which enable person to earn profit. Islam says that if someone want to make profit, he or she must be a risk of loss, and this risk of loss cannot be controlled. And this type of risk of loss is in the conventional banking sector. Look at here. Here there is a no risk of loss, but there is still risk of loss in Islamic banking. Look at here. From saving account, investment account, the financing modes, same as from current account, all the money, the financing. How Islamic bank finance? Through murabaha, through salam, through istisna. All of these three are sale-based modes. So sale-based mode means they sell on credit, then they receive the prices from the client. Murabaha, salam, istisna, these are sale-based, and because the Islamic banks finance these finance assets through these sale-based modes, and this is the credit, And when the credit, so the price becomes, their financing becomes debt upon the depositor. Debt upon the depositors, mean debt mean then, तो ये then बन जाता है. Then which type of risk in the debts? That is the risk of default. What is the risk of default? That the deposit, it is quite possible the client may default in payment his or her debts. So how these risk can be mitigated? The risk management says in Islamic banks, it says that Islamic bank can charge any guarantee, surety, personal guarantee, or the pledge from the customer, so that he or she may pay uh, pay the debts. Otherwise, if the client becomes do not pay the debts, then Islamic bank can sell out the guarantee, the pledge, to recover its own debts. तो जब आप किसी से कुछ डेट्स वसूल कर लेते हैं, कुछ जमानत, तो फिर आपका वो रिस्क ऑफ डिफॉल्ट जीरो हो जाता है, आप सिक्योर हो जाते हैं. तो रिस्क ऑफ डिफॉल्ट, अगेन एंड अगेन आई एम सेइंग दैट दिस रिस्क ऑफ डिफॉल्ट इट डज नॉट इनेबल एनीवन टू अर्न प्रॉफिट. याद रख लें ये बात. इस्लामिक फाइनेंस कहती है कि जो रिस्क इंसान को इस काबिल बनाता है कि वो नफा कमा सकता है, वो रिस्क ऑफ डिफॉल्ट नहीं है, वो है रिस्क ऑफ लॉस. तो जो रिस्क ऑफ डिफॉल्ट नहीं है, वो रिस्क ऑफ लॉस है. एंड वेयर इज द रिस्क ऑफ लॉस? इजारा. इजारा मीन लीजिंग, टू गिव समथिंग ऑन रेंट. हियर रिस्क ऑफ लॉस भी है, रिस्क ऑफ डिफॉल्ट भी है. रिस्क ऑफ डिफॉल्ट कहां पे आएगा? इफ लेसी कस्टमर डिफॉल्ट इन रेंटल पेमेंट, दिस इज रिस्क ऑफ डिफॉल्ट. व्हाट इज द रिस्क ऑफ लॉस? So in ijara, both type of risk exist: risk of loss and risk of default. Risk of default, when customer does not pay or customer fails to pay rentals, then this is risk of default faced by Islamic banks. How Islamic banks can control this risk? Through charging, again through charging pledge, through charging any security. Islamic banks can control this risk. What is the risk of loss? Because in ijara, the asset is owned by Islamic bank, not by the client. If there will be any damage to the asset caused by the factors beyond human control, like flood, like earthquake, any calamity. So if asset is damaged, this risk will be borne by Islamic bank. Depositor will not bear this risk. So this risk is considered risk of loss. So this risk enable Islamic bank to earn rental upon its asset, and this rental will be considered profit of Islamic bank. ये बिल्कुल ऐसे है कि जब आप किसी का घर किराए पे लेते हैं, तो घर की मिल्कियत किसकी होती है? किराएदार की या घर के मालिक की? तो जो रिस्क होता है ना, रिस्क ऑफ लॉस, इट इज एसोसिएटेड विद ओनरशिप. घर गिर गया तो उसके पैसे आप किराएदार से वसूल नहीं करेंगे, वो घर का मालिक उठाएगा. बस उस घर के गिरने में किराएदार का कसूर ना हो कि घर में बम बना रहा और ब्लास्ट हो जाए और घर गिर जाए. बात कर रहे हैं कि वैसे ही. तो ये जो अदरवाइज क्या कहते हैं कि भी इजारा का कॉन्ट्रैक्ट तो ठीक नहीं होना चाहिए था. किस लिए ये जो हम माहाना किराया देता है मालिक मकान को, वो किराया किस बात का होता है? वो उसी बात का होता है कि भी वो बंदा मालिक अपने मकान पर रिस्क बियर कर रहा होता है कि तो उसका घर यूज हो रहा है, उसके घर डेप्रिसिएट हो रहा है, दूसरा के भी उसके घर को नुकसान भी हो सकता है, अर्थक्वेक आके गिर भी सकता है. तो ये वो रिस्क बियर कर रहा है. ये रिस्क बियर करने की वजह से वो इस बात का एलिजिबल होता है कि उसे किराया कमाया जाए, कि वो किराया कमा दे. अदरवाइज तो वो किराया फिर उसके लिए जायज ही नहीं होगा. तो दिस इज द डिफरेंस. सो रिस्क ऑफ लॉस and risk of default, both type of risk exist in ijara. And risk of loss, it is It exists in shirka, partnership, running musharka, and mudarba contracts. When Islamic banks finance their clients in these two modes, then it means that Islamic banks are bearing risk of loss. Investment agar wo karenge, if there will be loss, then Islamic banks will bear that loss. So this loss cannot be controlled. ये control नहीं हो सकता. So this is the big difference between Islamic banks and the conventional banks. Okay, conventional banks are not ready to bear any risk of loss. They just deal in guaranteed profits. Neither depositors are ready to bear any risk of loss, nor conventional bank is ready to bearing any risk of loss. So that is why there is a no concept of loss here. But in Islamic bank side, Islamic bank is also bearing risk of loss, and the depositors are also bearing risk of loss. So this is the difference between these two systems.